An enraged alien king watches in disbelief as a lone human gladiator decimates an entire army of his fiercest warriors. The captive human slave Adam Foster, armed only with savage determination and raw tenacity, unleashes a storm of death upon the Denobulan ranks. Dragged from the burning cinders of humanity's fallen colonies, Foster found himself an unwilling pawn in King Orion's bloody arena. The technologically superior Denobulan Empire had swept aside Earth's meager defenses like a cruel child scattering toys. Now, the conquered remnants of the human race served as lowly thralls and grisly entertainment for their alien overlords. But Adam Foster refused to die easily. Each clash in the arena saw him growing faster, stronger, more cunning. He spilled alien blood on the sands and scavenged weapons from the fallen. Foster's mounting victories spread like wildfire whispers among the slaves, murmurs of a human who couldn't be broken, who fought without fear. King Orion seethed upon his opulent throne. The human's uncanny skill and stubborn refusal to submit chipped at his authority, his control. Orion craved to see Foster shattered for his insolence, to make an example of him before all. In a fit of malevolent rage, the king decreed that Foster would face his greatest challenge yet, an entire Denobulan army. As the fateful moment arrives, Adam Foster stands tall, baptized in alien blood. Under the searing gaze of his captors and the despairing eyes of his fellow humans, he prepares for a battle that will echo through the ages. One human, alone and defiant, holds the fate of his species in his war-scarred hands. The shattered bones and broken bodies of the Denobulan host will tell of a man who fought like a caged animal, a gladiator without equal, a legend who showed the galaxy the indomitable nature of the human spirit. As the Denobulan horde charges, a savage grin splits Foster's blood-streaked face. He reaches to his collar and activates a hidden device, a final gift from Zora. In a flash of blinding light, an exoskeleton unfolds around him, encasing his body in sleek, hardened panels of human ingenuity. The Denobulans falter, eyes wide at this forbidden technology. Foster exploits their momentary shock, surging forward with amplified speed and strength. He leaps into their midst like a titan unleashed, his exosuit-enhanced blows shattering alien bones and armor with ruthless efficiency. Zora's rebel faction springs into action, sabotaging power nodes and triggering cascading failures across the arena's systems. Localized blackouts and malfunctions sow further chaos among the Denobulan forces. Foster presses his advantage, smashing through their front lines and hurling raiders aside like ragdolls. King Orion rises from his throne, apoplectic with rage as he watches the human decimate his army. Spectators murmur in disbelief, their bloodlust warping into a morbid fascination at the unprecedented spectacle. A few even dare to cheer for Foster, their shouts crackling with the electric thrill of an underdog uprising. The battle rages on, a whirlwind of broken bodies and sparking steel. Foster never slows, never relents. Even as his exosuit buckles under the onslaught, fissures spiderwebbing across the carbon fiber plating, the human fights like a man possessed. Pain is fuel, fear is forgotten. All that remains is the next target, the next kill. Denobulan commanders bark desperate orders, trying to outmaneuver this armored juggernaut and his rebel accomplices. But Foster has become a force of nature, unstoppable and unrelenting. He smashes through their defenses, hurling plasma grenades that incinerate entire squads in starbursts of blue fire. With the end in sight, Foster charges the dwindling Denobulan forces, ignoring the flashing warnings across his HUD. He diverts all power to the exosuit's fusion core and braces himself. A blinding pulse erupts outwards, an electromagnetic tsunami that fries Denobulan weapons and armor like overloaded circuitry. In the ringing silence that follows, Adam Foster stands alone, wreathed in acrid smoke and twisted metal. The Denobulans lay broken at his feet, their army shattered like cheap clay. Above, the human slaves rise in a thunderous cheer, their roar shaking the arena's very foundations. Zora emerges from the shadows, picking her way through the carnage. She nods to Foster, respect, and something more glinting in her eyes. "You've given them hope," she says, her voice low and urgent. But this is only the beginning. The denobulins will come for you now. For all of us. Foster's exosuit hisses and disengages, servos whining in protest. He rises from the wreckage to face her, his body pushed beyond limits he never dreamed possible. Zora extends a hand, her words a thrumming undercurrent against the crowd's building chant. You can run, disappear. No one would blame you. Or, she meets his gaze, unflinching. You can fight, not just for survival, for something more, for the freedom of every human in denobulin space. The weight of the moment hangs between them, heavy with promise and peril. Foster tastes copper on his tongue, smells the tang of spilled blood and ionized air. King Orion's furious shouts echo from the royal box, promising retribution, promising ruin. But Foster barely hears them. His attention is locked on Zora, on the choice that could change everything. Around them, whispers of revolution build like a gathering storm, the first embers of defiance kindling in human hearts across the colonies. A reckoning is coming. And Adam Foster stands at its center, the eye of a hurricane about to be unleashed. Foster's hand closed around Zora's, his decision made in the heartbeat between breaths. The roar of the crowd faded to white noise as their eyes locked, an unspoken pact sealed in blood and defiance. I'm in, he growled, voice raw from the battle. But we move now, no time to waste. Zora nodded, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. She tapped a concealed communicator, speaking rapid fire in a language Foster didn't recognize. Within moments, the arena erupted into chaos. Explosions rocked the foundations, plunging sections into darkness. Rebel operatives materialized from the shadows, guiding shell-shocked human slaves towards hidden exits. Foster scooped up a fallen denobulin energy rifle, its weight unfamiliar but welcome in his hands. This way, Zora hissed, leading him through a labyrinth of maintenance tunnels. The acrid stench of melted circuitry filled the air as they emerged into a cavernous hangar bay. A sleek transport ship hummed to life, its boarding ramp extended in invitation. As they sprinted towards freedom, a furious bellow echoed from behind. Foster turned to see King Orion himself, resplendent in gleaming battle armor, storming onto the hangar floor. The denobulin monarch's eyes blazed with murderous rage as he raised a crackling energy sword. You dare, Orion roared, his voice carrying even over the ship's powering engines. I will hunt you to the edges of the galaxy, human. There is nowhere you can hide from my wrath. Foster's grip tightened on his weapon, but Zora dragged him up the ramp. We can't fight him now, she insisted. We have work to do. The ship's hatch sealed with a hiss of hydraulics, muffling Orion's impotent threats. Foster stumbled into the co-pilot seat as Zora's hands flew across the controls. With a bone-rattling roar, the transport blasted out of the hangar and into the star-studded expanse of space. Welcome to the Resistance, Zora said, allowing herself a grim smile. Hope you're ready for a fight. In the days that followed, Foster found himself thrust into a world of shadowy networks and guerrilla tactics. Safe houses on backwater moons became temporary homes, as Zora introduced him to cells of human rebels and sympathetic denobulins. Each group brought its own skills and resources to the cause. Hackers, weapons experts, former soldiers united by a common enemy. They struck like phantoms in the night, materializing to sabotage denobulin supply depots before vanishing into the vastness of space. Foster learned the art of stealth, trading raw power for precision as he led daring raids to free human slaves from labor camps and ore processing facilities. Word of his exploits spread like wildfire through encrypted channels. The gladiator who defied a king became a beacon of hope, his name whispered in the darkness of cargo holds and the din of crowded marketplaces. For the first time since Earth fell, humans dared to dream of something beyond mere survival. But as the rebellion grew, so too did the Empire's response. King Orion's madness found its mirror in General Dax, a veteran warrior with ice in his veins and steel in his spine. Dax unleashed a reign of terror across the colonies, public executions serving as grim reminders of denobulin might. Foster watched the latest propaganda broadcast, his face hardened as Dax's cold eyes stared out from the screen. You've lit a fire, Zora said quietly, resting a hand on his shoulder. Now we have to make sure it spreads faster than they can stamp it out. Their chance came with intel on a secret Denobulan research facility, whispers of weapons that could turn the tide of war. Foster assembled a strike team, Jace, a human hacker with fingers that danced across keyboards, and Kira, a Denobulan warrior, whose hatred for Orion burned hotter than plasma fire. They slipped past the facility's outer defenses like ghosts, Jace's code unraveling security protocols faster than the Denobulans could patch them. Foster led the charge through twisting corridors, his stolen exosuit humming with nearly unleashed power. They fought their way to the central vault, securing a treasure trove of prototypes and classified data. Victory tasted sweet, but it was short-lived. Alarms blared as Dax himself arrived, leading a corps of elite shock troops. The rebels found themselves trapped, caught between impenetrable walls and a relentless enemy. "Go!" Kira shouted, her eyes gleaming with fierce purpose. "I'll hold them off. Make it count, Foster." Before he could protest, she shoved him through the emergency hatch, sealing it behind them. The last thing Foster saw was Kira charging into the teeth of Dax's forces, her war cry drowned out by the sound of searing energy weapons. The team scattered to prearranged rally points, carrying their precious cargo to hidden rebel strongholds. Foster's fists clenched as he stared out at the stars, Kira's sacrifice weighing heavily on his conscience. He knew the price of rebellion would be paid in blood, but the reality of it cut deeper than he'd imagined. In the flickering light of a secret base, Zora pored over the stolen data. Her eyes widened as she decrypted file after file, each one revealing new horrors and opportunities. "This is it," she breathed, looking up at Foster. "With this, we can hit them where it hurts. But it won't be easy. We'll need allies, resources." Foster nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Then let's get to work. It's time to show the Denobulans that humans aren't just pawns in their game. We're coming for the king." "Throne." Foster's words hung in the air, charged with purpose. Zora nodded, her eyes glinting with fierce approval. They had ignited a spark, and now it was time to fan the flames. In the weeks that followed, Foster found himself at the center of a growing storm. The rebels moved like shadows across the Empire, striking Denobulan targets with surgical precision. Foster led daring raids on supply depots, his exosuit humming with power as he tore through enemy defenses. Each success emboldened more humans to join their cause. But for every victory, there was a price. King Orion's fury manifested in the cold efficiency of General Dax. The Denobulan commander's reprisals were swift and merciless. Foster watched helplessly as Dax's forces razed an entire human settlement, the screams of the innocent searing themselves into his memory. "We need to hit them harder," Foster growled, smacking his fist on the tactical display. Zora's face was grim in the flickering light of their hidden base. "We will," she assured him, "but we need—" An alarm blared, cutting her off. Jace burst into the room, his eyes wide. "Incoming transmission," he panted. "You're gonna want to see this." The screen flickered to life, revealing a face Foster didn't recognize. The human's bearing spoke of authority, his eyes sharp with intelligence. "Adam Foster," the stranger said, his voice crisp. "My name is Marcus Vale. I represent a concerned party. We've been watching your exploits with great interest." Foster's eyes narrowed. "And?" "And we'd like to help." A ghost of a smile touched Vale's lips. "How would you like to level the playing field?" Within days, unmarked ships arrived at rebel outposts across Denobulan space. They carried crates of advanced weaponry and armor, gifts from Vale's mysterious benefactors. Foster ran his hand along the smooth lines of a plasma rifle, feeling its potential hum beneath his fingers. The new arsenal changed everything. Suddenly, rebel fighters could stand toe-to-toe with Denobulan soldiers. Foster led the charge to liberate Outpost 17, a sprawling labor camp on a desolate moon. The battle raged for hours, energy weapons sizzling through the air as Foster's troops pushed forward. When the dust settled, Foster stood atop the command center, the Denobulan flag burning at his feet. Cheers erupted from the newly freed humans, their faces alight with hope for the first time in years. The victory sent shockwaves through the Empire. More humans flocked to join the rebellion, emboldened by Foster's success. But not all of their new allies were human. Zora introduced Foster to Krell, a Denobulan warrior with eyes like chips of ice. "Not all of us support Orion's madness," Krell said, his voice low. "There are those who remember a time before tyranny. We would see that time return." As Foster's influence grew, so did the complexities of rebellion. Alien factions whispered promises of support, each with their own agenda. A group of Denobulan merchants offered weapons and intelligence, their eyes gleaming with the promise of future profits. Foster found himself thrust into a world of shifting alliances and backroom deals. Every decision carried the weight of lives in the balance. The true test came when Orion unleashed his wrath on the outer colonies. Foster watched in horror as Denobulan warships rained fire on human settlements. The rebellion's communication channels overflowed with desperate pleas for aid. "We have to help them," Foster insisted, his eyebrows furrowed. Zora's expression was grim. "It could be a trap. We don't have the firepower to take on their fleet." Foster met her gaze, his decision already made. "Then we'll find a way." The ensuing space battle was chaos incarnate. Foster's stolen cruiser shuddered under the barrage of Denobulan weapons. He gritted his teeth, barking orders as rebel ships danced between enemy fire. A familiar voice crackled over the comm. "Did you think you could hide forever, human?" General Dax's cold tone sent a chill down Foster's spine. Foster's ship lurched, alarms blaring as Dax's cruiser tore through their shields. He looked out at the sea of stars, at the human colonies burning below. For a moment, doubt gnawed at him. Was this the right path? How many more would die before this war was won? As if sensing his thoughts, Zora's hand found his shoulder. Her touch grounded him, reminding him of all they had fought for. Foster took a deep breath, pushing aside his doubts. "All ships," he commanded, his voice steady. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We're not done yet." "Yet." Foster's voice rang out across the bridge, steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "All ships, execute Protocol Omega." The rebel fleet scattered in a prearranged pattern, each vessel disappearing into hyperspace with pinpoint precision. Foster's cruiser shuddered as it jumped, leaving behind the burning wreckage of their desperate battle. Hours later, Foster stood before a hastily assembled war council. The faces of his comrades were grim, etched with the toll of recent losses. Zora's eyes met his, a silent question lingering between them. "We can't keep this up," Foster said, his words heavy in the air. "Every victory costs us more than we can afford to lose." Kira, the fierce Denobulan warrior, slammed her fist on the table. "We have momentum. Now is the time to strike, to crush Orion's forces while they're reeling." Foster shook his head. "At what cost? How many more civilians die in the crossfire?" The council erupted into heated debate. Foster listened, weighing each argument carefully. The burden of leadership pressed down on him. Every life lost another weight on his conscience. Before a decision could be reached, alarms blared throughout the base. Jace burst into the room, his face ashen. "Orion's fleet. They've found Sanctuary Prime." The view screen flickered to life, showing a nightmare unfolding in real time. Denobulan warships hung in orbit above the sprawling human colony, raining fire upon defenseless cities. Foster watched in horror as entire blocks vaporized. The screams of the dying carried across encrypted channels. "No!" The word escaped his lips, barely a whisper. In that moment, all debate ceased. The path forward crystallized with terrible clarity. Foster's eyes hardened as he turned to his assembled lieutenants. "Prepare all ships for immediate deployment," he ordered. "We hit them with everything we've got." The next hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Foster led from the front, his stolen exosuit humming with deadly potential as they assaulted key Denobulan installations. Plasma fire lit up the void of space, rebel ships dancing between the beams of enemy cruisers. In the chaos of battle, Foster's strike team infiltrated a heavily guarded research station. They fought their way through winding corridors, the air thick with ozone and the screams of the dying. Jace's fingers flew across alien consoles, unlocking encrypted files. His eyes widened in shock. Foster, you need to see this. The hollow display flickered to life, revealing schematics for a weapon beyond nightmares. A bioengineered plague, designed to target human physiology with ruthless efficiency. If they deploy this, Zora's voice trailed off, the implications too horrific to voice. Foster's mind raced. Their primary objectives lay elsewhere, each one vital to crippling Orion's war machine. But this changed everything. New plan, he growled. We take this place down, whatever it takes. The infiltration became a desperate race against time. Foster's team fought their way to the central reactor, planting charges as they went. Denobulan reinforcements poured in, threatening to overwhelm them at every turn. Jace took a plasma bolt to the chest, his body crumpling as he finished the final override. It's done, he gasped, a pained smile on his face. Make it count, boss. Foster carried his fallen friend, sprinting for the extraction point as the station began to shake itself apart. The stolen shuttle barely cleared the blast radius as the reactor went critical, taking the bioweapon research with it. In the aftermath, Foster stood before a sea of tired, battered faces. Human refugees and rebel fighters alike looked to him, hope and fear warring in their eyes. We've dealt Orion a blow, he said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. But the cost, he faltered, thinking of Jace and countless others lost in the flames of war. A commotion at the back of the crowd caught his attention. A bedraggled courier pushed his way forward, clutching a data slate. Sir, intercepted transmission. You need to see this. Foster's blood ran cold as he read the message. Orion hadn't given up on his bioweapon. The research had simply been moved, hidden away in a new black site. He looked up, meeting Zora's steady gaze. In that moment, his persistence crystallized. The horrors he'd witnessed, the lives lost. All of it would be for nothing if they faltered now. Gather our best, Foster said, his voice low but filled with steel. We're going hunting. We're going to end this, Foster said, his eyebrows furrowed. Once and for all. The interrogation chamber reeked of fear and desperation. Foster loomed over the trembling Denobulan scientist, his exosuit's servos whining softly as he leaned in. Where? He growled. The scientist's eyes darted frantically. I can't. Foster thumped his hand on the table, leaving a dent in the metal. People are dying. Your king is planning genocide. You have a choice to make. Seconds ticked by. Finally, the scientist broke. The Crimson Nebula, he whispered. It's hidden there. Foster's mind raced. The Crimson Nebula was a death trap, a swirling mass of radioactive gas and gravitational anomalies. No wonder Orion had chosen it. Hours later, Foster addressed his inner circle. We need ships that can withstand the nebula's conditions, and environmental gear for the team. Zora frowned. That's specialized equipment. Where are we going to get it? A wry smile touched Foster's lips. I know a guy. Krieger's den was a maze of contraband and ill-gotten goods. The renegade trader's cybernetic eye whirred as he sized up Foster. Quite the shopping list, Krieger mused. Planning a nebula vacation? Foster met his gaze. Something like that. Krieger's laugh was all steel and circuitry. Well then, let's talk price. The journey to the nebula pushed their new ships to the limit. Swirling crimson gases engulfed them, sensors struggling to penetrate the chaos. Foster's fingers tightening as he gripped the controls, narrowly avoiding a sudden gravitational eddy. There! Zora's voice crackled over the comm. Anomalous energy readings at 2 o'clock. Foster's eyes narrowed as the cloaked facility shimmered into view. All teams, prepare for insertion. The moment their boots hit the deck, plasma fire erupted from hidden emplacements. Foster dove for cover, his heart pounding. It's a trap, he shouted. Dax must have known we were coming. The air filled with the screams of the wounded and dying as Foster's team fought their way deeper into the facility. Corridors became kill zones, rebel and Denobulan bodies alike littering the floor. Foster's exosuit sparked and smoked, pushed beyond its limits. He staggered into the central lab, coming face to face with a cold-eyed Denobulan woman. Adam Foster, she sneered. I am Malkath. You're too late. Foster raised his weapon, but Malkath was already moving. Her fingers danced across a console, activating a swirling vortex of energy. Behold, she cried, the purification of the galaxy. Foster's blood ran cold as he realized the true scope of Orion's plan. This wasn't just a weapon, it was extinction. A shot rang out. Malkath's eyes widened in shock as she crumpled to the floor. Behind her stood another Denobulan, her lab coat stained with blood. I'm Vara, the newcomer said, her voice shaking. We don't have much time. Together, they worked to overload the facility's reactors. Alarms blared as they sprinted for the extraction point. Foster! Zora's voice cut through the chaos. We've got company! General Dax's remaining forces had them pinned down. Foster watched in horror as Zora threw herself into the line of fire, giving him the opening he needed. No, he screamed, but it was too late. Zora's lifeless eyes stared up at him as he stumbled into the escape shuttle. The nebula lit up like a supernova as the facility exploded. Foster's battered ship limped away, carrying the weight of victory and loss. Days later, Foster stood before the assembled rebel leadership. His body ached, his heart heavy with grief. But as he looked out at the sea of determined faces, he felt a spark of hope. We've struck a blow against Orion, he began, but the real fight is just beginning. Foster's words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of loss and the promise of continued struggle. The assembled rebels looked to him, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and unwavering commitment. Before Foster could continue, alarms blared throughout the base. Jace burst into the room, his face pale. Multiple Denobulan warships dropping out of hyperspace. They're launching fighters. Foster's mind raced. Evacuate all non-combat personnel. Get our ships in the air. The base erupted into organized chaos. Foster sprinted to the command center, barking orders as he went. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the incoming Denobulan fleet. They're hitting us everywhere, Zora reported, her fingers flying across tactical interfaces. Simultaneous attacks on Outpost Gamma and New Eden Colony. Foster's eyes hardened. Orion's gone all in. We hit back harder. The next hours blurred into a frenzy of tactical decisions and desperate gambles. Foster coordinated strikes against Denobulan supply lines, crippling their ability to sustain a prolonged assault. Rebel ships danced between enemy fire, striking with precision born of necessity. New Eden's orbital defenses held, but Outpost Gamma fell to Dax's relentless assault. The general's face appeared on the command center's main screen, his eyes cold with triumph. Surrender now, Foster, Dax sneered, or watch as I turn your precious outpost into a graveyard. Foster's response was cut short as the feed abruptly terminated. Jace's voice crackled over the comms. Sir, we've breached their command codes. We have control of their weapon systems. A plan crystallized in Foster's mind. Patch me through to all rebel frequencies. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. This is Foster. All ships converge on these coordinates. Today, we bring the fight to them. The assault on Dax's fortified base was a maelstrom of plasma fire and explosions. Foster led from the front, his exosuit scorched and dented as he pushed through Denobulan defenses. Kira fell to enemy fire, her final words lost in the din of battle. Foster pressed on, grief fueling his tenacity. They found Dax in the heart of the base, surrounded by his elite guard. The Denobulan general's eyes widened in shock as Foster's team burst through the blast doors. It's over, Dax, Foster growled, his weapon trained on the general's head. Dax's laughter was bitter. You think this changes anything? Orion will... Foster's stun blast cut him off mid-sentence. As Dax crumpled to the floor, Foster felt a searing pain in his side. He looked down to see his exosuit's armor breached, blood seeping through. We got him, Foster gasped into his comm. Start the extraction. Back aboard the rebel flagship, Foster watched as Dax was secured in the brig. The victory felt hollow, tempered by the cost in lives. Zora approached, her expression grim. What now? Foster's eyes hardened. Now, we make Orion an offer he can't refuse. The encoded transmission went out across all denobulan frequencies. Foster stood tall despite his injuries, his voice steady. King Orion, you have one chance to end this war. Release all human colonies, grant us autonomy. In exchange, you get your general back. He paused, allowing his next words to carry their full weight. Refuse and we deploy a bioweapon tailored to denobulan physiology. Your move. As the message concluded, Foster turned to his assembled advisors. The future of both species hung in the balance, with peace and annihilation both within reach. The tension in the negotiation chamber was palpable as Foster faced King Orion's envoys across the polished obsidian table. He could feel the weight of countless lives hanging on every carefully chosen word. A sudden commotion outside the chamber doors shattered the fragile atmosphere. A rebel lieutenant burst in, face pale and eyes wide. "Sir," he gasped, "Alara's faction, they've gone rogue. Multiple denobulan targets hit in the last hour." Foster's stomach plummeted. He turned to the denobulan delegation, their faces already hardening with fury. "This wasn't us," he began, but the lead envoy cut him off with a snarl. "Treachery!" The denobulan thumped his hand on the table. "Your word means nothing, human." Before Foster could respond, the envoy's communicator chirped. The alien's eyes widened as he listened to the incoming message. "General Dax is dead," he announced coldly. "By order of King Orion, this farce of a ceasefire is over." The room erupted into chaos. Foster's security team formed a protective circle around him as they retreated from the rapidly deteriorating situation. As they raced through the corridors of the neutral station, the first explosions rocked the structure. Denobulan warships had opened fire, their barrage shattering the illusion of peace. "Get me a secure line to our bases," Foster barked as they piled into their shuttle. "We need to coordinate our defenses, now." But it was already too late. Reports flooded in of massive orbital bombardments, decimating rebel strongholds across multiple sectors. The denobulan war machine had been unleashed in full force. Foster's flagship barely escaped the destruction of their primary base, shields flickering under the onslaught of denobulan fire. He stared at the tactical display, watching in horror as one rebel position after another winked out of existence. "Sir?" Zora's voice was tight with pain as she nursed a plasma burn on her arm. "We're receiving a transmission from Alara." The militant leader's face appeared on the main screen, her eyes blazing with fanatical intensity. "This is our moment, Foster," she declared. "No more half measures. No more appeasing the alien oppressors. Join us in total war or stand aside." Foster's response was measured but firm. "Stand down, Alara. You've doomed us all with your actions. We need to present a united front or—" Alara cut the transmission. Foster's fist clenched as he realized the full scope of the disaster unfolding around them. Days blurred together as Foster's forces fought a desperate two-front war. Denobulan ships relentlessly harried their fleet, while ground battles against both aliens and Alara's militants raged across a dozen worlds. In a rare moment of respite, Foster found himself in a strategy session with his inner circle. The holo display showed their dwindling resources and mounting casualties. "We need an edge," Zora said, voicing what they all knew. "Something to level the playing field." As if in answer, a priority message flashed across Foster's personal comm. His eyebrows furrowed as he recognized the source. "Krieger," he muttered. The renegade trader's face appeared, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. "I hear you're in a bit of a jam, old friend," Krieger said with a predatory grin. "How'd you like a little black market miracle?" Foster's teeth gritted. "What are you offering?" "Cutting-edge human tech, cybernetic enhancements that'll turn your soldiers into one-man armies. Interested?" The silence in the room was deafening as Foster weighed his options. The cost would be high, but the alternative— "Send the specs," Foster said finally. "We'll talk terms." Weeks later, Foster stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as a planet-wide battle unfolded on the interfaces. The strategically vital human colony of New Horizon had become a crucible, with Foster's cyborg-enhanced troops caught between denobulan invaders and Alara's militant forces. He watched as one of his cybernetically augmented soldiers single-handedly disabled a Denobulan tank, while another group held off waves of Alara's fanatics. The power was undeniable, but Foster could already see the toll the enhancements were taking on his people. "Sir," Jace called out, his voice urgent, "we've located Alara's command post." Foster's eyes hardened. It was time for one last gambit. "Prep a strike team," he ordered. "I'm going in personally." As Foster donned his own newly enhanced exosuit, he knew the next few hours would determine the fate of humanity in this war. One way or another, this civil war had to end. Foster's enhanced exosuit whirred as he strode through the dimly lit corridors of the rebel base. The weight of his decision pressed down on him, heavier than any armor. "Sir, are you sure about this?" Zora's voice crackled through his comm. "Meeting Alara is a huge risk." Foster's heart made. "It's a risk we have to take." Hours later, Foster found himself in a derelict mining outpost, surrounded by the watchful eyes of Alara's militants. The rogue leader herself emerged from the shadows, her cybernetic enhancements glinting in the low light. "You've got guts coming here, Foster," Alara said, her voice a low growl. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't kill you where you stand." Foster met her gaze unflinchingly. "Because Orion has a weapon that will make our war irrelevant. A ship-mounted cannon capable of wiping out entire colony worlds." Alara's eyes narrowed. "Prove it." Foster activated a holographic display showing intercepted Denobulan transmissions and schematics. Alara's lieutenants murmured amongst themselves as they analyzed the data. "It's real," one of them confirmed. "But there's more. The cannon has a weakness. Its power source can be overloaded." "The catch?" Foster asked, already knowing the answer. "It can only be done from within the royal throne world itself." Silence fell over the room as the implication sank in. Alara paced, her augmented limbs whirring softly. "You're proposing a suicide mission," she said finally. Foster nodded. "But it's our only chance. We hit them from multiple angles. Your forces launch a frontal assault as a diversion, while my team infiltrates the throne world." Alara's laugh was bitter. "And I'm supposed to trust you?" "Trust that we both want the same thing, humanity's survival." For a long moment, Alara said nothing. Then slowly she extended her hand. "We have a deal, Foster, but if you betray us—" Foster clasped her hand firmly. "We're in this together now." The next days were a whirlwind of preparation. Foster's cyborg-enhanced commandos drilled relentlessly, honing their skills for the infiltration. Meanwhile, Alara's militias readied themselves for the largest assault they'd ever attempted. As Foster boarded the stealth shuttle that would take his team to the Denobulan throne world, Zora approached. "I should be going with you," she said, her voice tight with worry. Foster shook his head. "I need you coordinating the assault from here. If we fail, you're humanity's best hope." The journey to the throne world was tense, Foster's team maintaining radio silence as they slipped past Denobulan patrols. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, Foster activated his neural link to the team. "Remember," he thought, projected to them, "our target is the cannon's reactor core. Everything else is secondary." They touched down in a secluded valley, cloaking devices masking their presence. Foster led the way, his enhanced senses scanning for threats as they approached the sprawling royal citadel. Alarms blared in the distance. Alara's diversion was working. Foster's team used the chaos to their advantage, slipping past outer defenses and into the heart of the complex. They fought their way through increasingly heavy resistance, Foster's enhanced strength and reflexes, allowing him to take down Denobulan guards with ruthless efficiency. But as they neared the reactor core, a familiar figure blocked their path. General Dax stood before them, his own cybernetic enhancements gleaming. "I've been waiting for you, Foster," he snarled. Foster turned to his team. "Go! Complete the mission. I'll handle Dax." As his commandos raced towards the reactor, Foster faced off against his old nemesis. The two enhanced warriors clashed in a blur of superhuman speed and strength, the very walls around them buckling from the force of their blows. Dax's fist connected with Foster's chest, sending him crashing through a reinforced bulkhead. "You've lost, human," Dax taunted. "Your rebellion ends here." Foster struggled to his feet, tasting blood. "You're wrong, Dax. It's only beginning." With a surge of desperate strength, Foster lunged forward. His enhanced fist pierced Dax's chest, crushing the Denobulan's artificial heart. But as Dax fell, his dying act was to plunge an energy blade deep into Foster's side. Foster staggered, the world spinning around him. Through blurring vision, he saw his team emerge from the reactor chamber. "It's done," one of them reported. "The core is overloading. We need to evacuate now." Foster nodded weakly, feeling his life ebbing away. "Go," he gasped. "I'll hold them off." As his team reluctantly retreated, Foster dragged himself to a control panel. With the last of his strength, he activated the Citadel's communication system, broadcasting to all human frequencies. "This is Foster," he wheezed, blood bubbling at his lips. "Orion's superweapon is neutralized. The Denobulans are vulnerable. Now is our chance for true freedom. Unite and finish what we started." Foster's eyes closed as the sounds of approaching Denobulan forces echoed down the corridor. The fate of humanity now rested in the hands of those he left behind. Foster's final transmission echoed across human-controlled space, igniting a firestorm of rebellion. Within hours, disparate resistance cells coalesced into a united front, their newfound commitment fueled by the martyr's sacrifice. Alara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as reports flooded in from across the sector. Human ships, once scattered and disorganized, now moved with deadly purpose. Her tactical display lit up with countless strikes against Denobulan targets. "We've just received confirmation," her communications officer reported. "The Epsilon shipyards are crippled. Their fuel reserves are burning." A grim smile played across Alara's lips. "Good. Push the advantage. I want every supply line within our reach hit hard." As days stretched into weeks, the human offensive gained momentum. Denobulan forces, caught off guard by the sudden coordination of their adversaries, found themselves on the back foot. One by one, colonial strongholds fell. But victory came at a heavy price. Alara's war room was a testament to the conflict's toll. Holographic displays showed entire regions reduced to rubble. Colony domes cracked open to the vacuum of space. "We're receiving a priority transmission," Zora announced, her voice tight. "It's from the Denobulan throne world." The main screen flickered to life, revealing King Orion's haggard face. Gone was the regal bearing of a galactic monarch. In its place stood a man driven to the edge of sanity. "Hear me, human vermin," Orion snarled, spittle flying from his lips. "You may have won a few battles, but this war is just getting started. My people will fight to the last drop of blood. We will—" Alara cut the transmission with a disgusted wave. "He's cornered, desperate." "But still dangerous," Zora cautioned. "Our intelligence suggests he's fortifying the throne world. If he's planning a last stand—" "Then we bring the fight to him," Alara finished. "Assemble the fleet. It's time to end this." The siege of the Denobulan throne world was unlike anything in human history. Hundreds of ships filled the system, locked in a deadly dance of plasma fire and missile barrages. On the planet's surface, Orion's forces dug in, transforming the once gleaming capital into a labyrinth of fortifications. Amidst the chaos of orbital bombardments and ground assaults, a small team of human commandos slipped through the cracks. Led by Jace, Foster's former right-hand man, they infiltrated the sprawling palace complex. "We're in," Jace whispered into his comms as they emerged from a maintenance tunnel. "But something's not right. The security's too light." As if in answer, alarms blared throughout the complex. A booming voice, recognizable as King Orion's, filled the air. "Attention all citizens. The time has come for our ultimate triumph. With the activation of the Purity Protocol, our world shall be cleansed of the human disease forever." Jace's blood ran cold as he decrypted the transmission. "It's a doomsday device," he reported to Alara. "If Orion triggers it, the entire planet becomes uninhabitable to any species but Denobulans. We'll lose everything." "Then you know what you have to do," Alara's voice crackled through the comm. "Stop him at all costs." The commandos fought their way through waves of gene-enhanced Praetorian guards, their cybernetic enhancements pushed to the limit. Corridor by corridor, they clawed their way towards the heart of the palace. As they neared the throne room, a familiar figure materialized from the shadows. Krieger, his cybernetic eye whirring with nearly unleashed fury, fell into step beside them. "Foster was my friend," the renegade traitor growled. "I'm here to make things right." Together they burst into the throne room, weapons raised. King Orion stood before them, one hand hovering over a pulsing red orb, the doomsday trigger. "You're too late," Orion sneered. "My legacy will be etched in the ashes of your—" Krieger lunged forward, a wild cry tearing from his throat. In his hand, a syringe gleamed with sickly green light. As Orion's guards moved to intercept, Krieger plunged the needle into his own neck. What happened next defied description. Krieger's form seemed to liquefy, cybernetic tendrils erupting from his flesh. He engulfed Orion in a storm of techno-organic horror, the two beings merging and twisting in a nightmarish ballet. Jace and his team seized their chance. They rushed forward, grappling with the mutating mass that had once been Orion and Krieger. In the chaos, Jace's hand closed around the doomsday trigger. With a final desperate heave, he tore it free. The throne room fell silent, save for the wet slithering of the abomination that writhed on the floor. Jace stared at the pulsing orb in his hand, then at his team. "It's over," he breathed. "We've won." But as alarms continued to blare and the sounds of battle echoed from beyond the palace walls, Jace knew the truth. The war might be won, but the real struggle, to rebuild, to heal, to forge a new future from the ashes of conflict, was only just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.